spring Ridge Lucky Dog race. We had high hopes. None of it came to fruition. Started out by, we got a little bit of a late start. We had some last minute stuff we had to do on our car. Discovered a couple small issues right at the last minute. We'd been working on customer cars, so we didn't have as much time to finish our car as we wanted, and unfortunately our car always comes last. Customer cars always get the most attention. So we got those things worked out, got on the road, and got to the track, unloaded, set up, and ready for the test and tune on Friday. And so the big changes on the car were the PDM and the ring and pinion. So 427 ring and pinion with the S54 in that car is awesome. I think it's the perfect ring and pinion for the Ridge and probably every track we go to except maybe Pacific. We might run out of RPM in Pacific, so we'll see. But not even halfway through practice and qualifying, well, just practice actually on Friday, one of the spider gears in the differential broke. So that was the end of the 427 ring and pinion. Fortunately, we carry backups, so our handy dandy 391 ring and pinion, or complete differential, went back into the car. And it's still a good setup. There's nothing wrong with it, it's just not as good. And so we went out, qualified Saturday morning, and I don't know what place we qualified in. We didn't get pole, so I wasn't really paying attention. And then started the race back at the APAC, worked our way up into, I think we were in, I want to say second place, and somebody was nice enough to T-bone me in the corkscrew. So that, with Lucky Dog, it's a no contact series, so if you have any contact, you're going in and talking to somebody, your fault or not. And if nothing else, they just want to make sure your car is okay and you're calm and not ready to fist fight the guy. So what was interesting about it is the car that hit me, I was behind it 2 turns prior, and I watched him hit another car and almost spin it off the track. And so I passed him to get out of the danger zone, and then he hit me instead. So it's sometimes just how it goes. But and then we had contact with another car. One of our other drivers had a just minor wheel-to-wheel touch with another car. No damage, just some wheel scuffing, but same deal, back into the pits. We had a couple super dogs, and it basically just did not go to plan. Car had great pace, but we put the car in the wrong place a few times, and we just got into some bad situations, and we ended up finishing 12th out of 80 cars. So not a bad finish, but you know, that car is totally capable of being on the podium at every race if we drive it correctly. So this one was on us. So after the race on Saturday, we put the car on jack stands, go to do the post-race service. Left rear wheel bearing had a lot of play in it, and rather than roll the dice and hope it would make it through Sunday, we replaced the wheel bearing. So that's a few hours service. So then we finished that, bled the brakes, threw in some new brake pads just because they were getting low, and since we had to take it apart anyway, might as well do it. Started the race Sunday, and Greg started us out. He was doing pretty good, and then he super dogged twice in a row. I gave him a pretty hard time about it. I got in the car for my stint. 20 minutes in, I super dogged. And the way Lucky Dog super dog rules work is the first one's a drive-through penalty, so it probably costs you less than a minute. By the time you drive through the pits, they shake their finger at you and you head back out. That one's recoverable. With the rules and the competitiveness, you can, if you get lucky, you can make the minute back. Second one's a 2-minute stop in the pits. Third one, which I did, is a 5-minute stop in the pits. But I had some cumulative infractions that, this is just a good example of how things don't always go your way. The lap after I super dogged, I hadn't gotten black flagged for it yet. Our crew chief radioed me, told me it had happened, but I hadn't seen it in the turns yet, in the turn workers. And so I had just passed a car in turn 12 where I'd witnessed that other collision. Passed down the inside. It was the same, and actually I followed another car through that was in our same class, and this was a lower class car we were passing. Followed through on the inside, no contact, no issue, no fuss, no muss. Really didn't think anything about it. And I just went ahead and popped into the pits to preventatively, or not preventatively, to just go ahead and get my penalty going for that, rather than wait for them to flag me in. And preemptively, that was the word. So as I pull in and they throw a timer on the car, and I'm going to go down and talk to Eric about what I've done wrong. And as I'm leaving the entrance to the pits, I went 4 miles an hour over the speed limit briefly. I hoped they didn't see it, but of course they did. And so I got a speeding penalty in the pits, and 129 and 25. And then as so I get down there and I'm talking to Eric, and he's like, okay, you just super dogged. And then he puts his finger in his ear and he's like, and you were speeding in the pits. And then he puts his finger back on his ear and he's like, and you ran a car off the track. And I'm like, what? I didn't do that. And I was like, do you have any details on it? And of course he didn't, because he just doesn't get those details. He just gets the kind of final result of what he needs to do. So nobody really knew what happened. And then we'd also broken a lug bolt, or a wheel stud, and that had happened right at pit entrance, so the pit marshal there watched it fall out, so that came in on the radio. That was the fourth and. So I just said, how about you guys push me back after I serve my penalty? I'll drive into the cold pits, get the car checked out. We're out of contention, so let's just make sure everything's safe, and maybe I can get to the bottom of what actually happened out on the track. So I go back, get the crew working on the car. I go down to Race Central and talk to timing and scoring just to get the lowdown on what happened. And the call they got in from the turn worker was that it was an unsafe pass down the inside, and the other car had to take evasive maneuvers. So definitely didn't run anybody off the track, but potentially gave somebody who's less experienced racing a bad time. So, and then, you know, I think those things matter because there's a big spectrum of people out there, and so there's a lot of, you know, very experienced seasoned racers that want to go out in an endurance race, and then there's a lot of guys who've never been in a race car before, and you know, so that doesn't give us an excuse to go scare the crap out of them on the racetrack. And I actually never got a chance to talk to the driver, so I don't know what their perspective on the situation was, but I did go back and look at the video, and in the video review, I think it was a pretty reasonable pass. I think the turn worker probably heard the call for me super dogging and then saw me do that pass, and it was just like, this guy's out of control. And you know, it's their opinion, and they're the ones who make the calls, so we have to live by them. But it is a good point. It's a good data point for how you can have a cascading effect of things going wrong. That any of those, that pass in turn 12 by itself never would have gotten us called in and never would have created a problem. But because I super dogged, then did that pass, then went 4 miles over the speed limit in the pits, and then a lug nut or a lug bolt broke on the car. I mean, it was just like all these things went wrong. So that pretty much ended our race. We sent Dave back out for a little bit, and it appears that our 391 differential has a pinion bearing going out on it. So that we were so far out of contention at that point, we decided rather than destroy the differential, finding out, we were gonna bring it back to the shop, call it quits, bring it back to the shop, do a post-mortem on it and see what's actually going on. So now we need new differentials, so that's the next step. But yeah, that was the race was super fun. Had a lot of good interactions with other A-class cars and some good fast driving. They lowered the super dog time this year, I think a second from last year. So it was a little bit faster and just generally a good time, but a lot of hard-learned lessons this weekend. We turned out to be our biggest enemy this weekend, and we're going to have to make sure we learn from those mistakes and don't repeat them. So we also have a cinematic video coming out for the race. It's just going to cover the action, the pits, the driver changes, fueling, and things like that, and be less about the details I was just talking about. It's more about just the racing, and so that'll be out in the next week or two, and it should be pretty good.
Okay, do.
Make sure you put that in the outtake. This time's for real.